Because we had the window open, Melissa told me in Chicago to quickly get into the back seat of this Pontiac, and Melissa and her friends, full-blown Dukes of Hazzard, into the car because the window was open, and Melissa's friend took this Pontiac off-roading. Remember how there was a curb? She took this Pontiac off-roading. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Monica. I like to post anti-MLM and some life content. In today's video, I'm going to be telling you guys the story that is the hot mess express of my move to Texas, what led up to it, how it was when I was there. I have recorded this video before. I actually recorded the video, edited the video, uploaded it onto YouTube, gave it to my Patreons to watch, and then I decided I don't like the way that the video came out. So I decided to re-record it, which is why if you look at the thumbnail, I look completely different than I did in the thumbnail, but I felt as though I didn't do the story justice, and I forgot a few things in the story as well. I always had a love for Texas. There was something about Texas that I always loved. Never even went to Texas. But I decided it was my goal to eventually move to Texas. In about 2010, 2011, I was invited to a party by some of my friends, and I decided to go. At this party we are going to name him Steve. Steve was at this party with his friends. By the end of the night, he decided to come up to me and talk to me and say the typical, "I saw you across the room, so I decided to come talk to you." Boy, bye. We exchanged, I think it was email, I can't remember. We exchanged something, which is what was our way of communicating with each other. Steve had told me that he lived in Texas, that's where he was stationed, and he was currently on leave at home in Jersey. He had family in Jersey. And we ended up, it was just a friendship, we were friends, and then eventually it somehow turned into a little bit more than friends, but we never made it official because he was in Texas, I was in Jersey. There were a few more times where he came home to visit his family in Jersey. And he did come for my graduation when I graduated with my master's degree. He did come for that graduation. And it was that trip where we decided that I wanted to come to Texas for a vacation and stay with him and his roommates. After he went back to Texas, I booked my ticket to go to Texas and go on vacation there. I arrive in Texas, everything is fine and dandy, it's a great time. And one of the first nights that I was there, Steve had asked me if I wanted to go to this bar that him and his roommates and some of his friends always go to. Okay, sure, it's one of your favorite bars, whatever. We went. When we went, there was this girl there. We're going to name her Melissa. The way that she was talking to him and the way that she was acting around him, I knew that either one, there was some kind of history there, or two, there was something going on, even if it was recently. That was just the hunch that I had. I felt it in my gut. But at the same time, I couldn't be upset because we never made things official. My ex was on and off in the picture. If you watch my toxic relationships video, I'm talking about that one. So I couldn't get mad. But y'all, let me tell you, I can go from 0 to 100, and 100 is Jersey girl attitude like that. The whole time, I thought to myself, I'm gonna be as calm as possible. I'm not gonna let any attitude come out because I can't be mad. There was another girl that was at the bar. She knew Steve and Melissa and some of Steve's friends, and I think she knew his roommates. We're gonna name her Chicago. She's from Chicago. As soon as I met her and as soon as we started talking, I loved her. Ain't nobody got time for that attitude, and that's exactly what I needed that night because I was a little hurt at the way that Steve just completely ignored me and was paying attention to Melissa. There's something about Steve that you guys need to know. Very manipulative, needs to be center of attention, because while all of that was going on, he kept saying things like, well, if you want my attention, fight for my attention. I'm not going to fight for your attention when I paid money to come to Texas to visit you and look for a job and possibly even move here, but you're going to be flirting and hanging out with another girl. No. I was talking to Chicago, and she had told me a little bit of the history between Melissa and Steve, so I ended up finding out certain things. At one point, I had gone up to Steve and asked him, what are we doing? Are we staying? Are we leaving? Because your friends and your roommates are leaving, so it seems as though you're a little busy with Melissa. And if that's going to be the case, I want to go home and I want one of your roommates to drive me home. Melissa came out of left field because she was one of those girls that was going to fight for his attention, whereas me, not going to do that, not wasting my time or my energy. She came out of left field and somehow started some kind of argument. Now, this is when I went to 0 to 100, and that is when I said, I'm putting my foot down. I'm not going to let some random chick yell at me because I'm asking him, hey, are we leaving or are we staying? If you're going to stay, I'll go home with the other people. Chicago intervenes into this argument because Melissa blew it up way out of proportion and caused a scene. Remember that, that's important for a little bit later. Chicago comes up, takes me out of the situation. She then proceeds to say, do you want a ride back to their house? You know, I'll drive you back. And I told her, you know what? Yes. But I did ask her, I said, hey, are you okay to drive? Like, are you good to drive? Yeah, I only had one drink. She seemed sober. When I talked to her, she sounded sober. I took her word for it. Big mistake. We're driving. Chicago swerves and hits oncoming traffic, a pickup truck to be exact. Now, this was your stereotypical pickup truck that you think of when you think of Texas. Big truck. We were fine. We didn't get hurt or anything. But I told her, pull over. Let's get all of your information out, switch insurances, that sort of thing. I can't do that, was her response. I asked her why. She proceeded to tell me that she had more than one drink. At this point, I wanted to call Steve and tell him to come pick me up. But of course, there was that whole fight that broke out. Chicago decides to gun it before I can even figure out the next steps of what I'm going to do in this crazy night. Then the pickup truck, out of nowhere, decides to whip around and follow us to wherever we were going. Now, the crazy part was I thought he was just going to follow us wherever we were going. No, he took it a step further and he decided to continuously ram into the back of this car. She was driving a Pontiac, so of course, big truck trying to run us off the road. At this point, I call Steve and I say, I need your help. I need your help on this. Proceeds to tell me, Steve tells me, you're on your own, kid. You and Melissa caused a scene at the bar. I want nothing to do with it. You're on your own. Figure it out. Now, my life was at stake here because it could have ended up way worse than it did, because the car could have flipped over, something else could have happened. I was in a place that I had no idea where I was. Melissa overheard the conversation that I had with Steve, and Melissa decides to call Chicago because apparently the two of them were good friends. After that conversation, Melissa planned to have her friends meet all of us. She somehow convinced Steve to go along with this plan, to meet at this parking lot. Chicago and I get to the parking lot, and the pickup truck decides to try to box us in. There was no way we were getting out of that parking lot because she pulled into an actual parking spot and there was a curb. Because we had the window open, Melissa told me and Chicago to quickly get into the back seat of this Pontiac, and Melissa and her friends full-blown Dukes of Hazzard into the car because the window was open, and Melissa's friend took this Pontiac off-roading. Remember how there was a curb? She took this Pontiac off-roading. I have no idea how we got back to this house. All I remember was being in the back seat of this Pontiac, bawling my eyes out, saying I want to go home. I don't want to be here anymore. I want to go back to Jersey. I'm done with this. No idea how we got back, but we got back to Steve's house. I don't know what happened after that because I ran into that house so quick, and I really don't know what happened. The reason why I ran into the house was because I felt as though I was about to have a panic attack. I run into the bathroom, into the fetal position, and start to have a panic attack. I have no idea how long that panic attack lasted. Steve comes into the bathroom. Steve tells me, "You did this to yourself. This is your problem. You can deal with this on your own." Excuse me? I finally finish having my panic attack. I hear Steve and his roommates and his friends partying in the kitchen. I decided to go to bed because I wanted nothing to do with it. My plan was to actually go to bed, wake up the next morning, and somehow get a cab to the airport and get on the next red eye to go back to Jersey. The next morning, Steve wakes me up and apologizes, says, "I'm so sorry, I was in the moment, I was heated, and blah, 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 and I saw that you weren't fighting for me, so I wanted to make you jealous." Okay. I ended up getting a job with a Volkswagen dealership that was in the area. Now, in case you didn't know, my first two cars were Volkswagen Jettas. I love those cars, and one of my dream cars that is an affordable dream car is the Volkswagen Thing. If you don't know what it looks like, I'm going to put it up on the screen right here. I saw this car in 50 First Dates, and when I saw that movie, I fell in love with that car, and I told myself one of these days I'm gonna have one of those. I would do an engine swap. I'd probably do a VR6, maybe a 1.8T, but I'm leaning towards a VR6. But anyway, that has nothing to do with the story. So I get this job at a Volkswagen dealership. I was so excited because this was my ticket to Texas. I could finally come to Texas. I tell Steve about it, and I asked him, "Can I stay with you guys until I'm up on my feet?" Because it was a bunch of people staying in one house, so rent would obviously be cheaper. And he agreed to it. He said, "Yeah, absolutely, you can be one of our roommates." And before I had left to go back to Jersey, he asked me to stay in Texas and not even bother going back to Jersey because he was going to miss me and all that kind of stuff. And I told him, I said, "Listen, I have to go back to Jersey because one, I have to put in my 2 weeks. Two, I'm not going to leave all my stuff in New Jersey." Like, what? He proceeds to then tell me that he's not sure how he's going to feel in 2 weeks when I decide to move down. Real winner, I know. But I told myself, you know what, even if it doesn't work out, and even if he decides to start dating Melissa, because since she was in the truck with him, he left with her that night at the bar. I don't know if I put that in the story, but he left with her that night at the bar when he told me, "You're on your own, kid." So I kind of had a feeling that that would eventually blossom into an actual relationship. And when he told me that, I had a gut feeling that something was about to explode. I put in my 2 weeks when I go back to Jersey. 4 days before he's scheduled to come and help me, because he told me that he bought a plane ticket so that he can come help me move down. He would drive down with me and he would help me get everything in my car, which, by the way, in case y'all didn't know, Volkswagens are great on trunk space. So if you're ever thinking about moving, y'all, I fit so much stuff in the back of my Volkswagen Jetta. And 4 days before, he calls me and says he never bought a ticket. 2, he's now dating Melissa. 3, he's not gonna come help me and I need to find a place to stay because I can't stay with them. Because it would be weird that I would be there, Melissa would be there. Which, yes, he was right. That would be very, very awkward. And I talked to my parents about it. I asked them, what do you think? I feel as though I still need to move to Texas. I feel as though I need to experience this. And I told them that my plan was to work at this Volkswagen dealership for 3 to 6 months and then move to Austin because it was on the outskirts of Austin. That was my plan. My plan was to eventually end up in Austin because it was a city and that's where I wanted to go. Because of my financial situation at the time, my parents ended up helping me out. They told me that they would help me out because they didn't know exactly how much of a hole I was in. They didn't find that out until I came back from Texas. But they helped me out a lot financially with this move to Texas. I ended up packing up my car at 24 years old, and my brother and my friend helped me move down. It was without stopping, it's a 26-hour drive, but I think it took us about 28, 29 hours with stopping for food and gas and that sort of thing. We get there Saturday, I start work on Monday. I hated that job at the Volkswagen dealership. I did. I loved all the guys in the back, the mechanics, the techs, the guys who detail, that sort of thing. I love those guys. They were great. And there's a story I want to tell you guys that I forgot to tell this story in my first video that I recorded. So I'm excited to tell this story. But the salespeople, there was one salesperson that I did kind of connect with, but the rest of them, we didn't really connect 100%. I preferred the other people that I was working with. But there was this one day where one of the guys who details the cars, he was this very big, stocky guy. A smart car comes in to get detailed and washed. This guy tried to get into this smart car to move it into the bay to be able to detail and wash. And he did not fit, okay? So he ended up driving this smart car around the dealership while he can't even close the door because that's how big he was. I wish that someone took a video or that someone took a picture because that was one of the funniest things I have ever seen. Just picture a big stocky dude, sorry, Lily decided that she's gonna be part of this video now too, in this smart car trying to drive it without even being able to close the door. Well, to kind of go over a little bit of the rest of the story, Steve, at one point, I didn't know, he knew the Volkswagen dealership I was going to work at because he drove me to my interview. And one day, everyone asked me, who's that guy that's standing by your car? Because if you don't know who he is, we'll protect you when you go out there. So I was a little like, what are you? I wasn't sure what they were talking about. I go outside and it's Steve. Eventually, we ended up talking. He told me that he was really sorry. He apologizes. He was texting me and calling me the rest of the time that I was in Texas. And I told him it's not gonna work. It's just not. Eventually, I decided that emotionally and financially, because of a lot of things that had happened while I was in Texas, which I will keep private, that I won't be sharing on camera, that I wanted to move back home. I was very homesick at the same time. Granted, I got this little baby while I was there. I got her during one of my lunch breaks. And in case you didn't know, she is a rescue. She was unfortunately used at a puppy mill and no one wanted her because she had udders. Literally, they were touching the floor when she was walking. So I took her. I ended up getting back on my feet. Towards the end of 2012, I got back on my feet. I got one of the best jobs that I've ever had in my life, besides owning the business, but working for someone. It was the best job I've ever had. I met some pretty incredible people there. And if anyone asks, would I do it again? Hell yeah. Would I move to Texas? Hell yeah, I'd move to Texas. The reason why I don't regret going to Texas, coming back from Texas, is because I would have never met all the people that are in my life now. I would have never found out who my true friends are and the true colors of people, which is why I made that toxic relationships video. And I would have never reconnected with my fiance. We would have never started dating, and I wouldn't be where I am today. Sorry for the giant cut. We had a situation. But basically what I was saying is, in the end, I would have done everything all over again. If there's anyone out there who's going through the same thing and you need someone to talk to, I'm always here. I might not get back to you right away because of how busy I am, but I do try to respond to all of my DMs, especially if it's someone who's asking for help or who needs someone to talk to, because I've been there before where you need someone to talk to and there's nobody there. And you don't want to talk to your parents, for example, because you feel like you're going to burden them. That was me a little bit. So I guess with all of that being said, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit like, subscribe, support me on Patreon, check out my merch. And this is Monica reporting to you live from a highway. Bye!